Hey guys, it's Jack. I just wanted to talk to you today about a way that you can help support the podcast if you're not already. To support the channel is to become a Patreon member. So we have Patreon memberships that start at just $5 a month. And when you sign up, you get access to all of our episodes ad free. That's the big bonus for that. I mean, we also do some Patreon bonus episodes for our subscribers. But this is the biggest and best way that you can support the Team House channel and podcast if you'd like to. And we really appreciate that. So go and check us out at patreon.com/the Team House.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Eyes On. I'm Andy Milburn.
I'm Jason Lyons.
I'm Dimitri Kontakos.
So, much to everyone's relief, I've been away for a couple of weeks, and I heard that the episode while I was away was the best yet. So, which is maybe like would be discouraging, right? But it's here back plugging away. Not to make this kind of a show and tell about my summer, but for audiences out there who might be interested in a more adventurous holiday, I took my son Marcus to South Africa, Zimbabwe, Botswana, and Namibia. There's another country thrown in there too. I'll remember it in a moment. And then we flew to Zambia. And then we flew to Mauritius, right? And Mauritius is a tiny dot in the Indian Ocean, 1,000 miles away from the nearest land, which is Madagascar. All in all, awesome time, and happy to post more details if anyone's interested in doing that themselves. We saw in Zimbabwe, aside from Victoria Falls, which is truly stunning. You know, even though I'd grown up learning about Victoria Falls, actually being there was extraordinary. I mean, I'm a bit of a cynic when it comes to wonders of the world, but this really took my breath away. And we did a helicopter flight down, over the falls. I mean, it's astonishing. Saw lions. I mean, we saw everything except rhinos close up too. Yeah, it's extraordinary. Okay, nice. That's. Sorry about that, but it's
Andy's,
good that
Andy's travel blog is coming soon.
Yeah, why not? If I get edged out, by Jack again, that's what I might do. Anyway, so while I'm away, things really haven't changed that much, right? Except, the latest is Netanyahu's address to the state of Israel, but with a very very clear message for the U.S. audience too, in which he not very subtly attacks the U.S. essentially with the implicit, not attacks, that's a strong word, but criticizes the U.S. The implication being for not backing Israel specifically with weapons. And he quotes Winston Churchill more than once in his speech. It's available on Twitter. He says, "Give us the tools and we will do the job." But even if you don't understand Hebrew, I don't understand Hebrew. I had to get people to translate it, and then of course the Israeli papers did a transcript, which I went through. But what's really bizarre is if you're holding this transcript and you're watching him, it's like it's ethereal. It's so detached from reality. It's totally untethered. And on the other side, I can't help thinking, it's not a political statement, but our own president should have seen this coming as early as November, and then again in December, and then in January, because essentially what has happened is we've got the president of or prime minister of a sovereign state, foreign country, criticizing the president. And right before, not the president, but the administration, right before announcing his intention to accept the invitation offered to him by, I think it was Chuck Schumer, right, to come and visit the United States, which we'll see how this one works out.
Yeah.
Okay, so in the transcript, Netanyahu says, "Put your confidence in us. Give us your faith and your blessing, and under providence all will be well." Blah 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 blah. So Give us the tools and we will finish the job. He finishes this. Actually, the last two sentences, three sentences are all straight from Churchill. I'm going to repeat them because it's a great speech, by the way, if you look at the original from Churchill, not Netanyahu. And remember, this speech is coming in 1940, right? After Dunkirk, after the fall of the European continent, et cetera, Britain standing alone, cliched though it may be, that was true at the time. And so Churchill comes out and he makes this speech. He says, give us your faith and blessing, and under providence all will be well. We shall not fail or falter. We shall not weaken or tire. Neither the sudden shock of battle nor the long-drawn trials of vigilance and exertion will wear us down. Give us the tools and we will finish the job. That was directed, towards Roosevelt, 1940, dark days of 1940. So now, according to Netanyahu, with questionable merit, he habitually likens himself to Churchill in Britain, in the beleaguered Britain of 1940, standing all alone against Nazi Germany, which has already occupied most of Europe. And of course, that's completely analogous to Israel in 2024, fighting, because Hamas is just like the Wehrmacht. It's ridiculous. I think it is, for someone who really doesn't understand or understands the context and takes it in that context, it's a surreal pantomime. But nevertheless, it happened. And we can't dismiss it because surreal pantomimes have become the norm in the Israeli government, sadly. So here's the Israeli prime minister standing all made up and festive in front of a camera, pretending to be distraught, faking a worried, grimaced expression. He's very good at this, Netanyahu, and sanctimoniously accusing the US of not standing by Israel after providing a mere $14 billion in emergency military aid, after authorizing the sale of dozens of F-35 and F-15 jets, sorry, should I say F-13? I'm jet lagged. After dispatching two aircraft carriers right to the Med. No, two aircraft carrier groups to the Med total. And now he stands up and accuses us of holding up arms shipments and not supporting Israel. It's
you know what it's analogous to? An actual like abusive, toxic relationship where it's like this guy just keeps gaslighting you, babe. Like it's time to pull the plug. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of ridiculous. And frankly, like to be honest, I don't think he should have been addressing Congress even before his speech that he gave in Israel about us not doing enough.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It's always been quite concerning, the hold that Netanyahu seems to have over influential segments of U.S. Lawmakers, and he exploits that. And for those of you accusing me of being anti-Israeli, this has nothing to do, again. I think I would stack my record against any one of your listeners when it comes to substantive support for Israel during the career. No one can accuse me of being anti-Israeli. I'm anti a lot of things, to include puffed up, wannabe dictators or what's the word? Popinjays. Dictator is rather it's not quite the right word, but consummate politician who has no relationship with truth and who is willing to sacrifice even his own people for his political career. Certainly the good of his own country. And I find that absolutely detestable, regardless of nationality. And no, that does not make me anti-Israeli.
No, I mean, he's a politician at the end of the day, right? And he's in a corner now. I mean,
well, but he's a criminal. He's an alleged criminal too. We shouldn't forget that, who is facing charges for corruption if he loses his premiership. And that is, that's always barking at his heels, regardless of
I mean, I just don't understand. He thinks what, like doing, like plagiarizing a Churchill speech is like gonna change the fucking winds that are blowing
Well,
politically in
well,
Israel.
well, I mean, the Churchill is Churchill has this kind of iconic hold on the imagination of populations that are not British, and it's stronger. It's stronger in former Commonwealth countries, but particularly the United States, and strangely enough, in Israel, this almost hagiographic eulogization of Churchill. And believe me, of course, I mean, I'm a Churchill fan, but you have to again look at context, and you have to look, the fact that he was a flawed human being. He was not a god, but nevertheless, in comparison to Netanyahu, well, there is no comparison, so it's ridiculous for the prime minister to to present himself as Churchill. On the other hand, pretty savvy political ploy, right? Because the Israelis certainly kind of see themselves, maybe not as a comparison to Britain in the Second World War, but certainly as a beleaguered nation right now, isolated, which indeed they are. But by public opinion, rather than in the same way that they were in 48, or again in 73, actually 56, 67, right, where that existence was threatened. Now I would argue that no, that it's not a direct existential threat. Yes, I have been up and down the border, and yes, I understand that Iran is lurking in the wings. I'm saying right now, Israel is not facing an existential threat. And we will talk about the nuclear threat down the road, which is nearer than perhaps many of us thought. The fact that Iran, by all estimates now, has enough enriched weapon grade uranium to make several weapons. But however, as Jason will tell you, and anyone who knows more about this than I do, which is a lot of people, having the enriched uranium and then weaponizing it are two different things. But nevertheless, at the most conservative estimates, that is the most optimistic estimates, are that the Iranians could manufacture more than one nuclear weapon within 2 years. Most conservative estimates, and as little as 6 months. That is frightening, and that is lurking in the background, of course. But again, we've talked about Iran here too. There's no playing this away and saying, oh yeah, but there are actually no. It's very frightening with the current administration that they are within reach of breakout. But these are separate issues. And Netanyahu's presentation right now, I think was the most appalling pantomime, and we just have to see and hope that it didn't have a strong pro-Netanyahu influence within this country. Hey, anything more on that, guys? I'm sorry, I warbled on.
Sorry. Did I read correctly that the IDF was just authorized an offensive into Lebanon? I'm positive I just read that.
You may have, yeah, I may have missed that news. I mean, it's what Israelis are. Most Israelis are kind of anticipating. But let's see, yeah, if that is indeed the case, that the order has gone ahead. But I think that would be quite momentous. I think that would be headlines, because that's the next step, right? You've still got 60,000 Israelis displaced in the north, and that is an issue. They're living with other people. They're living in northern Galilee. They're in hotels. There are effects on the Israeli economy of the fact that all these communities in the north have shut down and are being targeted intermittently, just enough to keep people out. They're being targeted by Hezbollah with missiles, and most frighteningly with drones. I say most frighteningly. I've written an article on Hezbollah's use of offline drones, which is kind of the latest trend, right, to avoid jamming. And if the Israelis have a massive jamming barrage going on. It reminds me of Ukraine in the north. I mean, you can't use your GPS. You have to pull out maps again, which is a shocking experience. But even with all that going on, now Hezbollah is able to penetrate Israeli air defenses. In fact, a lot of these drones go undetected now, and one you're probably reading some fairly large and more sophisticated ones are getting as far south as Nahariya, and even one to Haifa the other day. Nasrallah, the head of Hezbollah, gave a speech yesterday or day before, and it was about a 90-minute speech. Okay, I don't speak Arabic. I had to talk to someone who does. But it's very interesting. Nasrallah, he mentions drones, and then he laughs and laughs, and he says, "I just don't know what to do with all the drones I have," you know, and he talks about the fact that the Israelis will have no ability to stop them, and that is a real concern. The question, of course, is how much appetite for escalation Iran does. But right now, Iran's in the driving seat. You know, they've lost a few. They've lost a few of their higher level commanders, but these guys are all replaceable, and they become shaheeds. They become martyrs. So there's no sense that Iran has suffered from this whole thing. In fact, has profited greatly. And you have to look at, you know, when you look at the leaders involved in all of this, it just doesn't seem that Netanyahu belongs in that pack. I mean, even his adversaries are running circles around him. But he does hold a sway over this extraordinary segment of the Israeli population, the very, you know, what we would call extreme right. And there's two parts to this: settlers and the ultra-religious. They're not necessarily a shaded area of the Venn diagram. But they're the ones from whom he derives support. But, you know, before we leave Netanyahu, you know, like just some memories of what kind of guy we're dealing with here, and how frightening it is that we're inviting him to this. Not frightening. I mean, not frightening, but it's the fact that we've offered him an invitation. Okay, so this is the guy who back in 1991, all right, the first Gulf War, he accused the US of getting it all wrong in the Middle East. He was designated persona non grata by then Secretary of State James Baker. Okay, that was our successful war, right? And then he spoke to the House of Representatives in 2002. Some of you may remember this. I know Dee was still at middle school. So 2002, advising the Americans to invade Iraq because it would stabilize and democratize the Middle East, from Netanyahu 2002, right? So that was the last time he followed his advice.
It went really well.
Yeah. And now again, he's blaming the United States, and dares compare it to you know, his position to Britain in 1940 before the German invasion of the Soviet Union and Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor. You know, it wasn't genuine resentment at the U.S. that provoked this. In any case, it was he's playing to the gallery, and there again, there's a segment of the U.S. population. There's a large segment of the Israeli population, of course, that is pro-U.S. and looks to U.S. for leadership. But there's also a segment among Netanyahu's followers who are very resentful. You know, they play both sides. A lot of them. Some of them do have U.S. passports. They go back and forth. Some of them are neighbors of Dee's there in Brooklyn, but they go back to Israel. They spend most of their time in Israel, where they push their extremist agendas and back guys like Netanyahu, who will bring prominence to their agendas. So it's hard to see. I can't predict where this will go, but it's certainly going to be interesting. And it looks like every point we say we're at a crisis point, right? I don't know what more of a crisis point this is, but it's certainly some kind of a benchmark. Maybe not. Maybe everyone will just push on. Netanyahu will come here, and who knows? A year from now, we'll still be talking about him.
I mean, probably it sounds like that. That's probably the case.
Yeah, and his use of the term pressure, he used the term existential war in his address, um, which is again just hard to justify. All right, enough of that.
All right,
How are we
second,
doing? Oh,
we're
yeah,
doing
go on.
great. Second story was Uncle Vlad in North Korea visiting uh the great dear leader Kim Jong-Un.
Yeah, that was you want me to talk about it?
Sure, yeah, Jay,
Yeah.
what do you
All
got?
right. So Wednesday, we fly to the great, beautiful city of Pyongyang. Putin met with the dear leader, as you put it. And so what some are calling probably the biggest, or what could be the largest, strongest connection between Moscow and North Korea since the end of the Cold War. It was a multi-part agreement that was delivered. It covered bilateral relations, security, trade, investment, culture, and humanitarian ties. But the biggest part of it, which is of concern to the West, is, and this is not a quote from it, Article 4 of the agreement states that if either one of the countries is invaded and pushed into a state of war, that the other must deploy all means at its disposal and without delay to provide military and other assistance. So prior to this, that would have been stated bluff, or stated just fluff, actually. But now, as Moscow is looking to along with Pyongyang, looking to create fissures between any country that has an issue with the West and the United States in particular, that is a pretty big that's a pretty big gain for both of them. I know that North Korea has pledged fully to support the war in Ukraine with equipment and anything else that they can do. So it's a pretty big agreement. So
Yeah,
go ahead.
sadly, this is like huge for North Korea, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's the biggest strategic opportunity for North Korea since the end of the Cold War. I'm not talking so much about the terms of the agreement about mutual assistance in time of need. That really, I mean, there's an existing treaty between North Korea and Russia, dates from 1961, and the wording of that mutual assistance is in that treaty. So Putin's kind of just repeating that, but the fact that he has to put the dear leader kind of in the driver's seat here is the North Koreans have filled a particular gap, which has been artillery shells. And they have the ability to continue doing so, but there's also concern from the Ukrainians and the US that the North Koreans could potentially provide the Russians with other weapon systems. Okay, not particularly sophisticated ones, but we're talking particularly long-range precision fires. And when the Russians don't care that much about accuracy anyway, when they're just, I mean, they're shellacking infrastructure in towns behind the front line. So yeah, both sides, Russia will get that, and Kim Jong gets this incredible, prestigious position now, being front and center in the strategic partnership.
Yeah,
with implications, arguably, for the defense of South Korea. That's what Putin.
Yeah.
Wants
another
people to
part of
think.
that agreement too is along with the mutual aid is they agreed that neither of the parties can enter into an agreement with a third party if that agreement would hinder the core relationship between North Korea and Russia. So it, to me, to my knowledge, it seems that is directed more towards China, because China's kind of brushing off North Korea a little bit. Yeah, we'll get to you. And so I think it's on Pyongyang's side, it's creating just a little bit of a crack between, or trying to put a little distance between Moscow and Beijing, trying to stir up the waters there a little bit.
Yeah, that's a great point, because I said that North Korea gets prestige out of it, certainly, but there are also potentially more tangible advantage is that North Korea has been unable to get from China, right? So, help with nuclear weapons design, right? Re-entry vehicles for intercontinental ballistic missiles. That has been, that's kind of been a sticking point for the North Koreans of technology, and that will enable them to both extend the range of the missiles, but more importantly, potentially evade air defense systems.
Yeah.
Or at least make it much more tricky for all the reasons that we talked about here.
Yeah.
But also technology related to satellites, submarines, hypersonic weapons, you name it. China has been circumspect about helping Korea in this sense. Russia has no such compunctions, I'm sure.
Yeah, and I'm sure you saw this story about North Korea sending balloons filled with trash and feces across the border. So I'm sure that Russia can pipe in some of its shit bags and trash. That'll help out.
Did you see the Pentagon press conference about that?
No,
I saw a clip of it.
Yeah. It was Task and Purpose, right? Jeff, I forget his name, Paul. He says something along the lines of, hey, since the North Koreans are sending their shit over us, is there a plan to reciprocate, basically, by loading American shit up on balloons and sending them over to North Korea?
And South Korea, just like a couple hours ago, the South Korean president said that like they're going to re-examine sending arms to Ukraine now.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting. I wonder if I don't think that's connected though. I think
No,
it's probably just the fact.
I think they asked him about the Putin North Korea summit or whatever you want to call it, meeting, and that's what it's saying right now.
When we talk about satellite stuff, or the sensitive technology related to satellites, but ballistic missiles, nuclear weapons, all of that. I think that's really the real danger here. And North Korea's satellite launch attempt, experts, I love saying that. Experts say may have used a variant of a Russian-made engine. So the point is they may already be helping them. So awesomeness. Anything more on this match made in heaven between Putin and Kim Jong-il?
No, I'll keep
Kim Jong-un. Sorry, wrong one.
I'll keep an eye on it though.
Jay, what do you want to talk about the Russian Navy in Cuba?
Yeah, it's brief. So I'm going to start with a quote from Task and Purpose of all. It's an article from them from 13 June. And so they said, someone in the Kremlin must have opened Marco Ramius's letter because 3 Russian ships and 1 submarine are conducting naval exercises in the Caribbean this week. So if anyone is a fan of Tom Clancy, as I am, and has read the book or seen the movie The Hunt for Red October, they will know what that means. So 4 Russian vessels, the frigate Admiral Gorshkov, the cruise missile submarine Kazan, a tanker ship named the Pashin, and a rescue tug named the Nikolai Shiker made port in Havana, Cuba about a week ago now. The deployment, according to Russian media, is a routine one designed to extend friendly greetings between the countries. And the ships, the visit come after the ships conducted exercises in the Atlantic first, which I believe included missile drills, which always fascinated me. I've obviously never been a part of live missile drills, but could you imagine being an aircraft, a commercial aircraft flying over and seeing these freaking things flying everywhere?
I mean, that's close too, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
But of course, the Russians would never try anything from Cuba, right?
Absolutely not. Historically, not at all. And actually, allegedly, the submarine, the Kazan, I believe, was rumored that it came within like 30 miles of Florida or something like that. But that hasn't been substantiated yet.
I would love to have seen that thing surface.
Absolutely.
I
I
mean,
saw
can you
pictures
imagine?
of, yeah, there's Cubans just lined up taking pictures of these boats as they're coming into
You
the port. It's just nuts. But
that
but
would be a
also,
wonderful shot for Florida man out on
yeah.
that out of Sunday
Also
on the
some of the
pontoon boat.
yeah, some of the pictures that I guess I don't know if they were experts or some amateur took as the Kazan was going past, they were taking pictures showing like panels missing, all kinds of what looked like rust and stuff like that. So it in some expert minds it highlights the sad state of the Russian Navy. Um, so in response, which was actually a routine thing as well, the Navy has 3 destroyers: USS Truxtun, the USS Donald Cook, and the USS Delbert D. Black, as well as a P-8 Poseidon anti-submarine aircraft patrolling the area just to keep an eye on things. So everything that I'm reading, I haven't had a chance to speak to anyone, but everything I'm reading is that this is not something we should necessarily be alarmed about. This isn't a second Cuban Missile Crisis. Never count the Russians out, obviously, but it's highly unlikely that they would pull anything from Cuba, at least. Just a routine show of force. So interesting, but not necessarily alarming.
Yeah, it's a very interesting spike, but a distraction almost, right? To
Yep,
what Putin's really doing.
absolutely.
D, as we finish up, can we talk about a momentous lawsuit, civil case that has come to an end with wide-ranging and strategic implications?
Sure. Yeah, let's hear it.
Okay. Well, here's the deal, guys. Bottom line, today, or rather this week, a lawsuit against me was dismissed. You may say, well, I don't give a shit about that at all. But it's kind of interesting because there are I tell this story because there are all kinds of implications that I didn't even realize. But anyway, hey, so to backtrack, let's go back to Ukraine. All right, February or March of 2022. And Mozart Group was in its very, very inaugural stages, about 5 dudes in I almost said Moscow, but in Kiev, with Russians on 3 sides, right? Well, we're training local civilians to fight the Russians in a very shortened time frame, and wondering ourselves how we were going to get out of Kiev should it fall, which actually a lot of us thought it was going to do at the time. Well, all that was going on, a former Marine senior NCO by the name of Michael Ryan Burke, former reservist, recon guy. He comes into Ukraine along with a whole petri dish of hangers-on and wannabe camp followers who never get near the action but hang outside, in places like Lviv and party and takes lots of selfies. Anyway, so Ryan Burke meets, he checks in, he's on Lviv, he's on the party hardware kind of cycle there with his friends. They're going out drinking every night. He meets a girl who's also a volunteer working for another aid organization. In the course of that evening, she alleges that he rapes her, beats and rapes her. This story gets, not story, but I get told about this. I'm in Kiev at the time, and the Ukrainian police approached me to ask me if I can get out. Just kind of a notice to all Americans. Remember, comms had gone to shit. I had signal, and I had contact with Americans, a lot of Americans in country. We'd established kind of a network, and this was a chance. They wanted me to put out the word about this guy because they thought he was going to try and escape across the border, which he did. Anyway, so I did the more, and as the information started coming in, remember, as a journalist at Task and Purpose at the time, I wrote an article about this, saying that, Ryan Michael Burke, 38, being sought by Ukrainian Polish police after women reported that he had raped and beaten her. He subsequently, so this was published by Task and Purpose. Burke got back to the States. All right. He evaded. He paid a cab driver to get him across the border by his own admission. He checked in with the U.S. Embassy. The FBI wanted to speak to him there, apparently, but he took off, got back to the States. Once he's back in the States, he's free and clear because the FBI has no jurisdiction, even among American citizens in a foreign country, unless it's on a U.S. base or in a U.S. embassy. So he knew he was good then. And he subsequently brought a lawsuit against me, encouraged by by certain people. But anyway, the point is, so as soon as he brought the lawsuit, The Intercept jumped on. My old friends there, led by what's his name, Peter Maas. Yeah, Peter Maas. That very, very unpleasant, sanctimonious person who has good reason not to like me, actually. Let me say that. But anyway, so The Intercept public, poor old, this guy has been vilified, with no evidence, blah, blah, blah. Millman wrote this article. Task and Purpose took the article down. All right. God bless them. They took it down because they were worried about a lawsuit. And I think, underneath that all, I was a freelance. So they had no confidence that I had researched this, maybe. But a guy named Paul Schroeder, who was kind of my point of contact at Task and Purpose, came to my support. Thank you, Paul, by the way. And Task and Purpose decided to fight the lawsuit because as they started to uncover stuff, they realized, shit, this guy. There was substantive. The article was substantive. Anyway, 1 year later, all right. All charges have been dismissed. Task and Purpose lawyers, God bless them, uncovered, the police reports in Poland, lots and lots, witness statements. It was depositions that were very, very harming to Michael Burke. Photographs of this woman after, showing bruises after she'd been beaten. The medical reports, U.S. Embassy reports, you name it, all right, just comes piling in. He thought that all this shit had been buried because Lviv police station had been hit by hit by missiles and destroyed. So he thought there were no records or anything, but the Poles kept records, thank God, as did the U.S. Embassy, of course, as did the FBI there, although they were just saying, hey, this guy left the country. Headed back to States. So anyway, but this took a year, right? And in the end, he walks away. Even though everything is dismissed, he doesn't go to jail. Nothing happens to him for for what he did. And I'm down. Even with insurance from Task and Purpose. That only covered maybe, a 1/5 of my lawyer's fees. So I'm down hard after a year. But, it just shows you that, fuck, man, a guy with no backing, but given confidence by two idiots in the media, Maas and who's that other? Oh, God. Who's the other guy I mentioned? Maas. Doesn't matter. Anyway, given, shit, not The Intercept, the other one.
Intelligence Online.
Oh. Yeah, or that too. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But encouraged to do this, and then being brazen, even after all this shit starts piling out, he claims, okay, well, maybe it wasn't slander, but Milburn was trying to get me killed, all right, by setting mercenaries on me. You just can't make this shit up. Anyway, it's been thrown out. But you will not see follow-up articles by The Intercept for their shoddy journalism, and you won't see articles by Intelligence Online. And I really would be interested. By the way, guys, if anyone knows anyone who works for Intelligence Online, just interview me, guys. All right, I've been tracking what you've been writing around me in the last 6-7 articles, and it is complete BS. All right, I don't know what your editorial standards are, but come on, this is not adversarial. Just talk to me. No, I'm not in fucking Armenia, as you suggested the other day, right now in March, and haven't been back. The Mozart group is done. Or your comments about how it came to be, a total bullshit. This idiot wrote it was ITAR violations. What, for training Ukrainians? Give me a fucking break. So Intelligence Online, please live up to your name, because right now you're looking like a severe lack of Intelligence Online, and you backing this guy Michael Ryan Burke simply because he was having a lawsuit against me is now making you look even more foolish. Intelligence Online, either hopefully they'll get a better journalism, better editor, or better what's the term, editorial policy, or I would suggest not subscribing, guys. This whole subscription only, but clearly, if my story is anything to go by, it's certainly not living up to its name.
I want to go back to that guy, the guy who raped the girl and beat the girl. What kind of dummy are you to file a slander defamation lawsuit when you know, like, it's gonna, if it goes to trial, for continues to proceed, like, discovery is gonna be an absolute disaster for you.
But it's not, though, D. That's the thing. Because discovery won't be a disaster, because the only thing out there in the public realm right now is a fucking Intercept article and Intelligence Online.
Right.
And they're not going to write follow-ups, are they? I challenged those two papers to do proper journalism and follow up with what happened with this case after they accused me of writing an article without doing the proper research.
Right.
And by the way, Task and Purpose, thank you. Thank you for supporting me on this. But I would like to see that article go back up, please. All right. I mean, what clearer victory for freedom of expression can there be than this? So I think you should trumpet it and be proud and just republish my article along with that fucker's face. I mean, guys, those of you who are Marines, take a look at this dude's face. All right. The way and think about this. When that photo was taken, he was a senior staff NCO. Now, those of you who are Marines, think, all right, reservist, senior staff NCO, big old flaming mustache and idiot grin. You know the type, right? But anyway, great points, D. So again, Intercept, and Intelligence Online. Please, yeah. I mean, I know, I'm not even worth going after. I'm not a Petraeus. I'm not a you name it. Any of the fat, the fat Leonard crowd of senior admirals who took money and lived a great life. I mean, none of that shit. So don't waste your time, but please at least just show some decent journalism and follow up on your trashy earlier stories by explaining what happened, the resolution of the law case that Ryan Michael Burke brought against me. Ryan, if you're watching, hey buddy, really, really dumb. But most of all, I am still shocked that you are a Marine and did that to a girl, regardless of circumstance, regardless of all the other bullshit mitigation that you put up. The fact that you wore the uniform, did that, and then had the balls to bring a lawsuit, it really does sicken me. So you could probably the rest of your life, hopefully, just be known as the rapist.
And here's hoping that his victim is recovering well.
Yeah,
and, that's the other thing. I mean, there's an awfully tragic part of this story. I mean, she won't ever recover, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't. I mean,
right.
and having corresponded with her father during all of this, I mean, my heart goes out to them.
Yeah.
And during all of this, of course, no one really spared a thought for her, which is sad. And she was overjoyed when that article came out. So Task and Purpose put it back up. Absolutely. All right, that's me off my
Task and Purpose, do the right fucking thing, dude. You guys pushed out initially, then got involved in their lawsuit. Now I'm gonna call it fair and square, brother.
Yeah, I like.
We've been, so do I, but we've been shouting them out a lot.
But you're right.
On the channel.
But put that article back up.
Yeah.
How? I mean, because it's chicken shit if you leave it down now. Everything in that article has been backed up now in a civil court. and at a great cost, by the way.
Right.
And
Of task and purpose too. Like they
yeah,
spend
and
money on their law.
there should be some downside to beating and raping a girl, right? And then bringing a suit against the people who make that public and try and bring him to justice. The fact that that he gets rewarded at all by having a year of being center stage with certain idiots in the media who think he's some kind of fucking some total martyr, right? This historical reference for standing up against the Mozart group. Oh fuck. Anyway. Good luck to you the rest of your life.
It's pretty
Ryan,
wild.
Michael Burke, and anyone who dates you. Wow, be careful. Be careful.
I mean, it's pretty insane to think about like different media outlets defending the guy or whatever, or going after you just because you started the Mozart group and like.
Well, no. I don't know who Intelligence Online is after me, but if you're going to ask me if I ever pissed off anyone in the intelligence field in the course of my career, I would have to say possibly, right?
But what I mean is like defending a rapist.
Oh, yeah. Well, Peter Maas has a reason. Peter Maas's reason. Peter Maas, Maas, editor of The Intercept. He has a reason because he called me when I was in Ukraine back in April or May, all right, when the first US casualties started happening, and there was a Marine whose name I won't mention, who was killed there, and he was missing at the time. And so we were trying to find out what had happened to him. We were in contact with his family. And amidst all of this, Peter Maas calls me and goes, "Hey, Andy, we had known each other since 2003. When he covered the march up. Hey Andy, listen, I've been doing some research on this this guy who's missing, and turns out, hey, he got in trouble in the Marine Corps. He was given a other than honorable condition discharge. Why do can you verify that? Can you explain to me what that means?" And I told Maas to fuck off. I said, hey, they haven't even found his body, and you're here calling me, talking about his discharge from the Marine Corps. And by all accounts, this kid, he was a good guy. It doesn't matter, regardless. He deserves more respect than that. And Maas was like, yeah, whatever, fuck you. But he waited, and then I knew when we started having problems with Bain that Maas would make a reappearance. And sure enough, that Intercept article came out. But that was great. I'm glad it did. I am. I can't explain exactly why, but the last year recovering from this, coming back, you guys know this, and especially if you've been in the military, your reputation's the most important thing you have. And when you have people in mass suddenly sully that reputation, it's not easy, but the point is that that's not where I derive my sense of strength or self-worth. You can say that, but in the end, Jason, you know this is true. Your reputation still is so important. It's not a question, I care about what people think, but we know when all else is said and done, that is the most important thing when we're trying to judge whether to trust someone with something like our lives or the lives of Marines. That's an important aspect. Anyway, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, it's
great. But recovering from that has been. I've grown more, I would say, possibly than in the 30 years that I spent in the Marine Corps, in a sense, or maybe in a more, that's an exaggeration, but it was almost a decade of growth, I think, took place in that year. But I'm trying to get past the resentment and bitterness, because if I'd done shit, if I was a fat Leonard guy, I would have nothing to complain about if the media went after me. And I've got nothing to complain about anyway. I was front and center. I had to be raising funds for the Mozart group. Inevitably, someone would come after me. And you throw in, the fact that the Russians were doing that anyway. It was the easiest thing in the world for a trash rag like the Intercept to jump on the train. But anyway, I've emerged.
I'm glad there's some resolution here. And a rapist can be called a rapist.
It's piece by piece. First, The first lawsuit was dismissed. That one was the centerpiece of the Intercept article. That lawsuit was dismissed entirely. The Intercept never did a follow-up on that. And now the rapist one's being dismissed. It's incremental. But one thing I've realized is I don't give a shit. Although I care about my reputation, I will narrow it down to say I care about my reputation among people who matter, obviously, who include all of our audience, include you guys. I mean, you can't get wound around the axle about what people say who don't even fucking know you.
Right.
From our comments every week, right?
Yeah. Having said that, listen, like and subscribe.
Yeah, really do.
Follow Andy, his Substack, everything's down in the description. Patreon.com/the Team House. Help support the show. YouTube is destroying us. Follow Jason on nowhere. Yeah. And Andy, welcome back. We missed you.
Yeah, well, thank you. I missed being here.
Liar. Thanks, guys.
I missed you guys.
Thanks,
That's what I
everybody.
meant. Bye, everyone. Take care.